Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. We welcome your questions and comments. DJ at ArtistFirst.com. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. And congratulations on their 6th anniversary. It's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And yes, it has been 6 years that we've been inflicting ourselves on the general public.
Yes.
You'd think they'd be mad by now. Luckily, no one's listening. But we will persevere until we've annoyed at least one other person. And tonight, besides being the 6-year anniversary, we are going to talk about another annoying thing. Children.
Oh, okay.
Ungrateful buggers. Everyone should have one. I don't mean that. But we are going to talk a little bit about children. I want to go right into the quote because it's a wonderful, wonderful quote. So, Margaret, if you wouldn't mind.
Surely. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They came through you, but not from you. And though they are with you yet, they belong not to you. Khalil Gibran.
One of our favorites. Khalil is the best. And although he's a poet, this isn't poetry. This is really prose. And I was struck by this. I was just a little context, a little inside baseball. We were watching a program which was really much more technical, I guess. It was focused a little bit on what the current situation is in the world, and maybe it's even been exacerbated now because that video was probably a couple of years old before all the COVID nonsense. But the current situation in the world of certainly in most modern, most Western or modern nations, of a population decline, and in fact, in some cases, it's a population implosion. Where the replacement rate is not being met. We're under replacement rate, as the saying goes. Mm-hmm. And people say, "Oh, I thought the world was going to be overpopulated by 2000 or whatever the heck it was." Paul Ehrlich's The Population Bomb. It was famously quoted about that many times, about the population going to explode and we're going to eat up all our resources and we would have 4 billion people on the planet and we wouldn't be able to live. Well, about 4.5 billion people later, and we have 8.5 billion people on the planet, and we're doing okay, but we are looking at a sort of a looming crisis, let's say 30 years from now, which is beyond the horizon. Most people think about to next Tuesday, beyond the horizon of most folks to look at, 30 years out. But in 30 years' time, and this kind of works into our theme a bit too, in 30 years' time, we will maybe not be here, or we'll certainly be much, much older. We've had our children, and we've had our struggles, and many people have had children and have had their struggles. But, the whole focus of the Soul of the Everyman is no one gets off the planet alive. That's our theme. We have to return to that all the time. No one gets off the planet alive.
Right.
And by that, we really mean that part of your experience here is to live your life, to be a being, to be in the world and not of the world, but also to bring new life in. And people say, well, it's difficult. Yes, it's unrewarding. Yes, they're ungrateful little buggers. Yes, all those things. But you were once a child. And what I wrote a little bit was, inspired by Khalil here, is we're all of us children, all embodiments of spirit, all connected to Source. And we're temporarily here. We are temporarily incarnate. Maybe it's 100 years, maybe it's a lot less. That doesn't really matter. You have a life. You're here to dream the common dream. You're here to interact. But part of your arc an important part, not of everybody's, because you can't say everybody should do this, because some people aren't qualified and some people don't want to, but of most people. Part of your arc is bringing new life into the world, because, as Khalil says so poetically, life longs for itself.
Yes, life longing for itself. And when you look at the quote itself, because on an everyday basis, you basically look at your kids and go, okay, these are my kids. I gotta do all these things.
Pains in the ass. Sorry, right? My mic was on. Our kids, we love them. Hi, kids.
And there's a lot that just needs to be taken into consideration on an everyday basis. It's just the nature of raising children. But as they get older and much more independent, you realize that, yes, they have a life path of their own, and they have to make their own choices and be responsible for those choices, whatever they may be. It is their life. It is not yours. And many people have difficulty in letting go. Looking at it going, well, shouldn't I do something about that state that my child happens to be into? And the child is no longer a child, but an adult. So when you switch that question around, should I be responsible for what this adult is doing? And puts a whole different spin on your perspective. Because frankly, most of the time they don't want to be considered a child. They want to be able to go off on their own and discover what life has in store for them. It's all quite complex, and it is a very good thing.
Yeah, and you know, not so long ago, for all of us, we were all children. Some of us maintain that state even into later life, and sometimes that's a good thing. But in fact, we all were born as an incontrovertible fact. We all were helpless. We were all dependent. We were all foolish. We were all young once. And so, you know, your same desires to be free, to be independent, to, you know, to go out into the world are what your children have today, and what the children of your children have today, and what we all had millennia, hundreds of millennia, going back through the dawn of humanity on this planet. The basic need, well, the basic condition of life is it wishes to be free. And what comes along with it is what Margaret just said, responsibility for what you are and what you do. And you know, your parents, as a parent of a child, you spend so much time in their early part of their life fulfilling that role, the role of mentor, the role of protector, the role of provider. And you get used to it. It becomes part, interestingly enough, it can become part of your identity.
Right.
And the ego can get wrapped up in the identity of being a parent, of being the provider, the protector, the ever wise one. You know, I'm always going to be smarter. I'll always know what to say. I'll always know what to do. And you can wound is the word, but it's not. It's you can wound your children by infantilizing them far longer than they need to be, giving them, you know, too much reliance upon you, or encouraging them to rely upon you for wisdom, for guidance, for support. And so it's a codependent relationship. And you can see this, you know, unfortunately in many families where there's the need for the child who's no longer a child to be coddled or supported or infantilized or whatever. And then you can see it also in the parents, the need for the parents to have these dependent children to, even though they'll say, oh, I wish this and I wish that, they really don't want it. They want them to remain forever dependent upon them, because that position of provider, protector, of ever wise one is part of their persona, part of their ego, part of
they've identified themselves with parents.
And they become very fearful if this role starts to disappear, because well, who am I? You know.
Yeah, and I've seen this with a lot of mothers. Just, I don't want them to grow up.
Yeah.
I like them small. You know, I love the. Can't you stay that way forever?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look at them like, okay, I understand. You know, you're seeing them grow up. You know, and in the same breath, mind you, you hear them sort of complaining over how much they have to do for the children. So you realize that they aren't even aware of the difference in the perspective. You're complaining on one hand, and then saying you want them to stay that way forever.
They're conflicted, actually.
And it's very, what would be the word? Just there's no self-reflection.
Yeah, they're not very introspective about it.
Mm-hmm. And if they thought about it for half a minute, they would realize that it's this, I want this, this is what I think is perfect. This would be perfect. But my question is, perfect for whom?
Yeah.
It's not perfect for your child, but I guess it's perfect for you as the parent in that role.
And in truth, it's perfect for neither.
In truth, yes.
Yeah. Because, well, we could jump off in that direction. You know, there's an arc here to your life, and we started to talk about it a little bit just a moment ago. You know, you grow up and you become independent. Hopefully you're given your independence, but somehow you win your independence. You know, you step out into the world. You become what we call an adult, but in fact you can in truth assume adulthood even at an earlier age than quote unquote 18 or whatever the heck it is. Because by being an independent being, and then you find relationships. The relationships all throughout your life will develop and grow and change, but you may find another with whom you wish to spend the rest of your life with. You could be so lucky. And that's part of the arc too. And then the couple, renew that contract, renew that cycle, because in becoming independent and becoming aware of your own mortality, which is not obvious when you're young. You think when you're young that you will live forever, or that you'll be endlessly useful or endlessly puissant, or whatever you want to say. And Madison Avenue is more than happy to encourage these fantasies, value stuff, to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you realize that you are a mortal being, that you will not live forever. You see, unfortunately, everyone else, all your loved ones all around you, your parents growing old, your grandparents growing old, your grandparents passing away, and you realize that life is short. At least it's ephemeral. So you life, as Khalil again says, longs for itself. We long in this incarnation to bring in other incarnate beings into existence, into a body. And I think I read this, I didn't bring it into this directly into the quote, but it was a beautiful quote by Tolle that said, there are those who, when they speak to children, they raise their voice and they use funny sounds and they wave their hands and they talk down to them. And what you need to do when you see that being behind those eyes in that child is realize that this is an incarnate spirit, soul, equally as vast as your own, equally as powerful and as deserving of respect as your own. In this particular moment of time, in this particular now, you may have more knowledge about one thing or another, and they may have less. But from being to being, you meet their eyes. You know how this is, Margaret. You meet their eyes, and you don't need little words or gestures or all the little things. You need to meet their eyes, and see the presence behind there, and then find whatever avenue of communication works. Even in an infant, there's no words, but yet you see their eyes, and they see you seeing them, and then you feel that instantaneous connection of soul to soul, which is the true communication.
Mm-hmm. If you think of meeting these little ones, especially a baby, now, most people do baby talk, as we call it, and the baby has no clue of what you're saying. He's just picking up, or she's picking up on your expressions and your emotion, and just happy. They're just so happy to see that you're standing there. And so when you meet them eye to eye, it's just acknowledging, I see you and you see me. And there's just a quiet joy in that. They smile, that wondrous toothless grin that they have.
Yeah.
And you smile back. But then, trying to communicate, most people, they have different ways of almost play acting to the baby. And yes, the baby's trying to figure out what's going on. And if you're talking at him or her, it's just looking at you going, all right, I have no clue what you're saying. But if you did, if you were able to communicate clearly, mind to mind, oh gosh, what is the name of that cartoon character? Stewie.
Yeah.
The adult voice coming out of this small child.
Yes.
And all the acrid hatred that he portrays. But understanding that the soul that's in there is whole. And it's probably more whole than you are. Because you've been pulled apart a bit by life. But they're all brandy new.
Yeah.
And fresh. And just looking at you going, hey. So being able to meet anyone on that kind of level, understanding that this is a soul. We may be faulty in our communications. Doesn't mean the person's stupid. Because that is the general assumption. If you can't communicate, then somebody must be stupid.
And it's entirely unfortunate. And the other thing is, with these helpless, physically helpless infants, is they're not mentally helpless. In fact, I believe there's good research to show that the brain at infancy and the amount of information that it's processing is far greater in many ways than in adulthood. All the senses are open, and all the senses are firing, pouring information into the brain at an incredibly high rate. Infants have to learn, in essence, the skills of motor skills, of language, of interaction, of coordinating their hands and eyes and toes and fingers and crawl, all that in about the space of a year. Now, I hesitate to say that any one of us could repeat that feat now, because in essence, you'd say, starting from go, you're going to learn nuclear physics in a year. All of it, to be an expert, to be able to actually wend your way and know everything about a nuclear physical reaction. And you go, wow, I can never do that. Well, you already did the appropriate or the equivalent feat in becoming a toddler. So the capacity was there. The being, however, the being is not the brain nor the motor skills, nor the body that wraps it all in flesh. The being is there in presence, regardless of the amount of information that it has at its disposal. The personality, the being that's in there, is instantly recognizable at 9 months and at 99 years. You see the same soul, if you will, behind those eyes. Yes, in the 99 years, if you're so lucky, that soul will have learned a few things, will have experience, will have had the its experience bank filled with this life's challenges, with this life's sorrows and joys. So there will be something more there. And we talked a little bit last week about that holographic principle. You shatter the soul of source into so many fragments. And when they all come back together, they're bigger, they're greater, because the experience of being separated and going through those different paths, as we do here in this common dream, changes us. However, that personality, the being, is exactly the same. The being is not immutable, but it is beyond the physical, in the sense of it's not being created here.
Yeah.
It's having experience here, but the being itself, we, you, us, all of us, our being is incarnate and entirely present at the moment that you open your eyes, the very first time. It's right there.
Right. Your spirit is there.
Your spirit is there. And to go back to the parents, the arc of parenthood, when you encounter these beings for the very first time, usually under, let's say, challenging circumstances, like everyone is covered in blood, it's amazing because it doesn't, none of that, it all drops away. Yes, everything is this horrible, awful mess, and you mean
the birthing process.
The birthing process. It's wonderful. It's just this amazing. Never mind, I'm not going to go there because I'm going to get killed. Anyway, so there you are, and you meet this being for the first time, and you look into their eyes, and you see them, and they see you. Not so much in the communication realm, but in the being-to-being realm. Even before their birth, you can discern the presence there. Even before the birth, there is a presence there in the infant, in the womb. That presence remains. But that presence is not your presence. It is a separate presence. These children are not your children. Sure, they're your flesh and blood. Sure, they're related to you via DNA and every other blessed thing. Sure, they've got Uncle Fred's nose. But they've got their own unique being. And that being is not yours. It is part of Source, as you are. It is an emanation of Source, as you are, equally as vast as you are, and it doesn't belong to you. You have a relationship.
Right. The familial relationship is a physical one. Your DNA is shared. And even if you adopt, it's part of a larger grouping. This is the family. This is how we do life in this family.
Right.
But the spirit is unique, and that brings forth a soul that's unique, because the experiences are as unique as the spirit-to-spirit interplay. I don't know how else to explain. A relationship is spirit-to-spirit interplay, produces soul experiences. And the soul accumulation of experiences are shared back and forth. In a marriage, it's a direct relationship. In parent to child, a changing relationship, especially when it comes to adulthood and child or older adult. it changes because of time.
Yeah.
But to understand that the love is always there, the connection is always there. What changes is circumstances. So how does your circumstances help, how do I say this? Help the soul, spirit, elevate itself, brighten itself. Because the circumstances are, when you see a plant that produces a flower, I think of circumstances as the leaves in the stem. The soul, spirit being the flower.
Yeah.
Or when you think of that, it's the soul is the flower, but the seed that it produces is the spirit. Continuance of life.
Well, and by circumstances, I mean, in some ways, that the analogy is a good one, because although let's say, as the parent, as this part of your arc of your journey, when you decide to come together with another and produce a new person in this incarnate existence with a different, completely unique soul, completely unique emanation of spirit, you've got a tremendous responsibility to care, to give them care, to bring them into the world, to give them what they need. But the hidden responsibility is to not look upon them as your chattel, as your in some way that you are owed something from them, and that they are owned by you. There's an automatic, inbred, inherent, I should say, quality of freedom, of independence, of all beings. There's a voluntary relationship, and you can maintain the bonds of voluntary relationship throughout your whole lives, and I hope you do with your children. It may not happen that way, but the key here is that you grant them their freedom and their voluntary association with you. So what happens if you don't do that? You may have a close relationship with your kids, but neither one of you may have a mature relationship. It may be only one where, when I go to mom's, I have to act this way because this is how she expects me to act. And if I do anything that looks like it's not in the box that mom has me in, it gets uncomfortable.
Right.
But if you instead inculcate this idea of freedom, of free association with your own children, you may find that they like spending time with you, that you become friends in one regard, that your roles turn to be more like peers, that you go and you visit your mom, or they come and visit you, your children come and visit you because they like to hang out with you, or not. Mm-hmm. And you have to be good with either one of those, because you don't like everybody that you meet. And just because you're the son or daughter of somebody, or the brother or sister of somebody, you may think, well, they're not the kind of people I want to hang out with. Yes, you're my brother. Yes, I love you. Yes, you're my sister. Yes, I love you. But, as far as hanging out with you and having shared interests, we don't have those things. That's okay too. But it needs, you need to detach from this role of parenting and realize that it's now a phase. A flower has been produced, but now you can be plants together. I don't know. This is when you
together.
Yes, when you stretch an analogy too far, it just falls apart.
Breaks down.
And on the potted plants analogy, let's take a moment, take a breath, see if we can wrap this all back up together, and go back to the studio and have a couple of commercials here.
Moonstones and Murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some Moonstones and Murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the Adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Amanda Gray. Check out my new book, Glimpses of Grace in Georgia. Available on Westbow Press Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. More information can be found at my website, www.glimpsesofgraceingeorgia.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, E-Man. And tonight we are talking about children. Who's ungrateful? No. I mean, our children are wonderful. Of course, we lost one child. We lost Christopher when he was only almost 8 years old, and that was a life-changing, a shattering experience for us, and for all of his sibs. Of course, Kaylin was born after Christopher passed away, but for Ian and for Devin, it was a life-changing experience for them. And in that, you see the depth of the relationship, but there's something more important there. And we spoke about this a little bit in Christopher's book, There's Reaper. We had to let him go.
Yeah.
We had to let him go at an extremely early age from the point of view of the world. But realize, and this is going to sound, because you guys weren't there, realize that was a full and complete life, and that when Christopher left us, he had lived a full life, and we had, in that short span of time, was about 2 years, allowed him to become an adult, vast human being. It took a tremendous amount of work on our part, mostly on your part, right? Because you were on the front lines there more than I was, and you were helping this in facing your own mortality at any age. You realize that your life is not; it will come to an end, and it matures you. It puts you in the mode of seeking. What you're trying to do at that point is understand what is life, what is death, who am I. And to do it in such an incredibly short period of time under such difficult circumstances puts a tremendous amount of stress on the person, of course, and on those who were us, particularly you, Margaret, who was responsible for helping guide this need. There was an accelerated program in essence that had to let Christopher become almost an independent being as much as he possibly could be in these circumstances, because these were circumstances which put you into a greater level of dependence at one point, in one regard, because of the physical dependence of being treated and so on, and then allow his being and his mind and his body of course was being assaulted, but allow this expansion to occur, because and he was ready for it, but he needed those guideposts, and there were many, many, many different ones that we found along the way, different ways of speaking to him, things that made sense to him that would have never made sense to the average 6-year-old. But none of these kids in that ward were the average 6-year-old anymore.
No, none of them. They began to, speaking for Chris, although it is something that I had observed with a lot of the other children, but realizing that their lives can end, and they were wrestling with that thought. And it's a process. What was interesting to me was the fact that the older children had a much harder time than the younger ones. Mostly because, as teenagers, you want to think about the way your life is going to be, how you want it to be. And that, for younger children, doesn't, sometimes they think of, okay, I'm going to pretend to be a fireman or a policeman or a jet fighter or something, But a teenager is, going through the motions of, okay, I'm going to graduate and then maybe look into this particular career, and there were many kids that, especially if they were looking for something that was they would need to have their body for, like a dancer. There was one girl there, I remember, who had been studying ballet and had a tumor. And it was so painful for her to realize that she couldn't move around the way she wanted to. The radiation was horrible. Just changing the bandage alone, she was in just tremendous pain. And she and her mother would go through these battles. And she knew her mother was going to win no matter what, but she was just so, it's overwrought. It's a moment to moment. This is what I've got to deal with right now.
Right.
And I want to live. Okay? That is the overriding thrust of every single child on that ward. I want to live. So what do I have to do?
Yeah.
And this is where they would turn to the parents and the doctors, what can we do? Now, what usually happens is that there is a protocol that has been set, and you are given a variety of treatments that are a different, different pathways that you'd be able to travel in order to try to get rid of this disease, whichever cancer you happen to have. So there's a lot of internal, what would be the word? You have to gather yourself and your courage and know that in order for me to live, I'm going to have to do this. And I think a lot of people go into, well, if the doctors told me to do this, this is the only way it's got to happen. It's like, okay, well, this is what the doctor said. And there's a lot of people who believe on the outside, looking in, that must be the way it goes. And that is an assumption. If you believe the child doesn't have a voice, doesn't have a soul, doesn't understand that this is a fight for my life.
Yeah.
There is a determination. There's a word I'm looking for. They have to set their course. They have to choose and set themselves to the task.
Commitment?
Commitment, yes. But internal, I will do this.
Vow, promise.
To oneself, because you're in a funny situation, because in one sense it feels like your body has betrayed you.
Yes.
All right, it's sick, something's wrong, my body's betrayed me. And then you have to get over that. Because that word, betrayal, implies that suddenly your body was malicious towards you.
Yeah.
A conscious maliciousness. It's like, no.
I mean, and that this is out of ego, of course, because you've identified. You mentioned the girl who wanted to be a dancer, and there were so many others, especially at that age.
Yes.
Where the identity is starting to the ego rather is starting to use and make an identity, a persona. I'm a dancer. I'm a this. I'm a that. But when faced with an existential crisis, which is your life is on the line, the crux, the crucial matter that pops up there is again these roles. Your children are not your children. This is a wonderful line for this situation, because what it really says is your children who are going through this trial are going through this trial as beings, as people that you have to, that we had to, with Christopher, realize that this was his fight. We said it in his book. We knew it was his fight. We were only here to help. We couldn't fight it for him. And that's the rallying cry of everyone who sees their child in distress. Let it be me. Put it on me. Take this away from them. But it is their cup, literally their cup. It is, the path that their feet are on, and so they realize it. Especially the younger ones realize it almost viscerally because they still have that connection. The older ones have to shed the persona, the ego, and there's a lot of suffering and regret that comes with that. Oh, I wanted to be this, and now I can't be that, and I've got to fight this, and this can actually be incredibly detrimental. So to help them, to help anyone in that situation, you have to let them get to the point where they can let go of the ego and realize that this is the moment of now. This is a moment of your life that you have to do these things. As you said, it's a commitment, it's a determination, it's a realization that this isn't some sort of TV show where, there's going to be this 30 seconds from now, a miracle this, and it's going to go away and everything's going to be back to the way it was at the end of the show. No, life isn't like that. And you have to learn it so young is both a blessing and a curse, because learning it so young, you can learn it more easily. You don't have the layers of persona and all the things that you are layered on top of you that you have to burst through. But to have to learn it that young is difficult on you, difficult on your parents who want to protect you, want to provide, want to feel, that somehow they should have been able to stop this course. So that process, to individualize it that we went through with Christopher, taught us this sentiment that's in here, in this passage from Gibran. He wasn't our child anymore. He was a being in and of himself. We were there to help him go through this trial.
And the phrase that your children are life's longing for itself. It's life longing for life. This is what I mean by the children know that I want to live.
Exactly.
You can't get more intimate than understanding that drive of wanting to live, even if the outcome is not all that great. From the treatments, there are many side effects, and they make sure that you are aware of every side effect that is possible coming into these treatments. And towards the end, we were in real experimental treatments, cutting edge.
Yeah.
They will give you a permission slip that you have to write. You acknowledge that this is the treatment. These are all the possible side effects, and you have to sign off on it. It is the size of a booklet, especially when you're going through transplant. Okay? So, going through that booklet, your heart hurts because there are so many side effects. Everything from infertility, possible seizures because of the treatment, all types of damage that can happen, sensitivities. And you sit there as a parent looking at this and realizing life is so precious. I want him to live. And you check with him, he's like, yes, I want to live. Let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, now, I want people to understand, he understood this.
Yeah.
5 years old. He understood this. And he was giving permission.
And, in that existential crisis, we had to give up the fact that he was 5 years old.
Yes.
And realize that he was a being that needed to have his autonomy. And that he needed us even more than he did before, but not in the role of protectors and providers, but to support and to guide and to teach and to give whatever experience we had, because the days were short and we all knew it. Yes, the hope was always that he could be cured. But this experience in this compressed time frame, from the age of 5 to the age of almost 8, he had to learn, he had to realize who he was, which many of us go through our whole 99 years without doing, because we're hiding from it. But in these children, all of them, in that existential crisis, you could see them grow beyond their parents. And it would almost pity their parents in some regard.
No, they do. Especially if they've been fighting for any length of time. The looks on their faces, the pain in their eyes, they look at their parents. They're not afraid of death, but they are afraid that their parents, their mother will never recover from this.
Yeah.
I mean, they consider this, they see this.
Yeah.
Can you reassure your child that you're going to be all right? What's important right now is what's happening to you.
Well, and this is the process. And on both sides.
Seeing, especially the moms, and they're breaking down. So they're just like, we've got to do this. We got to try again. We gotta. And the reality has sunken into the child, realizing, I can't go on any longer. Not that they wanted to give up life, but they didn't want to take on that particular procedure. Because in their estimation, it's not worth the pain and the discomfort that it's going to require. So they make decisions, and these decisions are something that most people equate with adults who are much older, 80s, 90s, and suddenly they have to make a decision about medication for the heart or an operation or what. Like sitting there going, you don't understand. These little guys are there already.
Yeah.
And understanding that I want to live, and I make the estimation of what's valuable in my life because I'm living it. You don't know what it is to be me.
Yeah. And that's the pinnacle right there. As you say, the 80, 90-year-olds who you think they associate these decisions with, but in fact, they become the souls that they would have been after. Maybe not, because these children have, in that state, they have clearer eyes than the 80 or 90-year-olds in many ways. They don't have all the persona stuff.
There's no programming by society.
Yeah, or little of it anyway.
Right. They understand that again, I go back to life's longing for itself.
Yeah.
It's so primary that people gloss over it. Like, oh yeah, of course, we want to have kids. Like, no, you don't understand. That desire that is deep within you is so primal. And to deny the fact that it even exists is, how do we even say this? Not acknowledging a basic aspect of what it means to be human. Love of life. Because you can classify it, you want to say whether it's good or bad. that you want to take hold of it or not. And it has nothing to do with your mental evaluation that way. It has everything to do with a heart expression of being able to walk and love actively in this life.
Yeah. And, just to kind of pull ourselves through this arc of life, the one that you're just talking about, when you're going through the normal, quote unquote, normal arc of life, you become a parent, you become a caregiver, you hopefully are able to instill and inculcate in your children their beinghood, give them their independence, watch as they assume these new roles, and you move on. You move into the role of someone who's receiving care, someone whose life is nearing the end, and you have to find in yourself the end of yourself, the end of your persona, and to see it done so quickly and so beautifully in one way, so powerfully in one way. The example in Christopher is something that we were in some ways privileged to be a part of.
Right. He burned his life brightly, a fire. And we have reached the end of this show.
We've burned it all the way through.
Mm-hmm. So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.